All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started this afternoon. Again, thank you for joining us for taking your business to the next level. It's a three-part series that we're offering here from Unique Venues. This is the first part of that series, 10 Steps to an Effective Business Plan. With me today is Chuck Salem, the CEO and co-owner of Unique Venues, and Allison Salem, who is our Director of Marketing, and they're going to be helping out today. Chuck is going to handle the Q&A. And Allie is going to handle chat and the polling for that. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly here and just remind everybody how this works. We are, and I won't start it today just because I'm going to flip around a little bit. Oops, let me close that. Just a reminder that everyone will remain on mute during the webinar. So just, you don't have to worry about noise or anything like that. But that does mean if you have a question to ask, please use the Q&A dialog box to submit those questions if they're about the topic that I'm presenting on today, on the business plans or anything that I bring up. Other participants can see those questions. They can upvote or downvote them so Chuck can prioritize them. And that way I will take breaks every so often to feed those questions in and get them answered for you. We will run a few polls today. Allie will kick off 5. There's the obvious demographics and the session evaluation today. We're going to circle back and ask a few questions that we asked about a month ago, just to kind of see how people are thinking and the feelings have changed. So we've got one that's venue specific, one that's planner specific, and one poll that's industry wide. And then finally, just like the chat box is blowing up right now, keep it rolling. If you've got comments to share or other questions to ask of the group, feel free to use that chat box. And again, just a reminder, if you can select 2, all panelists and all attendees, that way everyone gets the benefit of what's going on. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get my PowerPoint started here. And do that. And just, Chuck, are you seeing my screen? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. So what we want to do today is just kind of walk you through 10 steps to building an effective business plan. Because if you're like me, a lot of times you come up with a great idea. We were talking about this on one of our all staff chats the other day. I'm a shower person. All my great ideas come to me in the shower. Other people, they come to them on walks. They come to them on, before they go to bed or in the middle of the night. Everybody's kind of got their time for inspiration. And oftentimes we come up with these great ideas, and then we are super excited about them, but we're not exactly sure how to start the process to implement them. And so this session will be about helping you think through just some common steps that you should walk through to execute one of the ideas that you have and to turn it into an effective business plan that you operate. Now, I want to just throw a couple caveats out there before we begin. One is that not everyone will use all 10 steps that I talk about today. So we're going to go through them all, but not every idea fits neatly into all 10 steps, but they're all things you should at least ask yourself and consider while you're putting together your plan. And the second thing is that today I'm going to have lots of questions that are asked of you. And we're going to take just a small break in a couple of places for you to do maybe 90 seconds worth of work on an idea that you have. So I want you to start thinking right now about an idea that you had recently, maybe something that you're thinking you want to do in the midst of the crisis, or something you want to do for your business, your venue, your event, your organization as we come out the other side. Start thinking about one right now. Get a piece of paper to write on, and so you can scratch out some notes, and we'll do a little bit of work here today as we get going.
Hey Joel, this is Allie. Real quick, I just want to let you know the PowerPoint, we're still looking at the member webinar PowerPoint. So
that's okay. Thank you for saying so.
You're welcome.
I obviously missed something on my screen share, so let me stop my share. And let's share again. All right, now are we seeing the taking your business to the next level PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
We're seeing the beginning slides. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you for
Joel, we're seeing there you go.
Good.
Yep, we're all set. All right. So today we're going to identify the 10 steps for building a plan. We'll look at each one and see how it fits in. We're going to relate each of those steps to a real life example. And again, as I mentioned, spend a little time working on our own business plan. Just a few quotes to get us started from some people out there. Steve Jobs, to me, ideas are worth nothing unless executed. They are just a multiplier. Execution is worth millions. So again, it's great to come up with the idea, but you've got to be able to implement it or have people around you that you can work with to make those things happen. And Steve Jobs was certainly an idea guy. There's no doubt about that. But he was someone that appreciated the fact that just because you had an idea didn't mean that it would be a reality without a lot of hard work and thought that goes into how to pull it off. Here's another one from Stephen Covey. Most people would agree that they'd be better off having an average strategy with superb execution than a superb strategy with poor execution. And think about that. Think about the times in your life where you've seen someone take an idea and then just botch it. Do very poorly with it in rolling it out. You think to yourself, gosh, if only they'd have done this, or if only they'd have thought about it that way. So again, ideas are great, but got to have some strategy that goes behind it. And finally, from author Sue Grafton, a favorite of my wife's, ideas are easy. It's the execution of ideas that really separates the sheep from the goats. And even from an author's perspective, I'm sure she has tons of ideas about stories that she could write, but it's sitting down and taking that idea, that concept, and starting to build out the chapters of that idea and thinking through the narratives that are going to be told with each of the plot points and the hidden twists and the different character development that goes into it. That's the essence for her of writing a novel. And again, it's the execution of those ideas that has turned her into a best-selling author over time. And so again, just wanted people to recognize that there's nothing wrong with visionary people. I've had the pleasure and privilege of working with and for lots of visionary people. But you've got to be able to pull that vision in, make sure people relate to it, and then figure out the right way to pull it off. So let's talk a little bit about the steps of a business plan. There are 10 steps that I'm going to go through today. Again, not all of them necessarily have to be included in every business plan. Step 1 is to pitch your business. 2, define your business model. 3, identify your target markets. 4, detail your marketing plan. 5 is to explain your sales model. 6 is to identify opportunities for success. 7 would be to supply key assumptions. 8, conduct a cost-benefit analysis. I know that sounds a little scary, but we'll talk about what that means. 9, detail the return on investment, or ROI. And 10, develop a plan for assessment. So let's start with step 1. Step 1 is critical to the execution of any idea that you come up with, and that's taking an idea, however grandiose or large or widespread that it is, and trying to refine it down into an elevator pitch. Now, everybody's probably heard that term before, an elevator pitch. The idea is that you get onto the elevator with your boss or a vice president or a senior leader or whomever it might be that you are responsible to or report to or needs to support your idea, and you have the time that you ride up the elevator with that person to give them your idea and pitch it to them, and to get them to say, hey, that's really interesting, I'd like to learn more about that, or hey, go ahead and develop that idea out further and let's talk about it in a couple of weeks. And so the idea is to develop something that you can get out in that 15 to 30 second ride, which I know goes against some of our core nature. Some of us immediately want to just start writing full paragraphs and long narratives about our idea and how wonderful it is. But for many people in decision-making roles, they simply don't have the time to go through 5, 10, 15-minute briefings or, read a 10-page report that you've put together. They want to get to the essence of what it is that you're talking about so that so they can decide if they want to pursue it further. And so the trick here is to try to do something in 1 to 3 sentences that are straightforward and ultimately get you to consider, why is your idea compelling? How do you sell that idea to someone else that you're going to need their support with? So I'm going to give you a little example of what an elevator pitch might look like. We've seen a lot of success recently with the educational series that we're doing. We've been so pleasantly surprised. And again, thank you to everyone for being here today. We're up to 232 people. That's just amazing. And so it's made us really ask ourselves, is there more we should be doing in the educational arena? Are there different ways that we could be serving our membership through educational activities? And so I've put together a quick 15 to 30 second pitch here. And my boss does happen to be on the the call, so we'll see if I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down yeah, he's listening intently. But I put together a quick pitch here that we can hopefully take a look at and see how it goes. So here's my elevator pitch if I get on with Chuck. Based on the success of our recent webinars, we should offer a unique venues university curriculum that members can complete online at their own pace. Topics would include fundamental marketing and sales strategies, as well as modules on management, finance, and strategic planning. Current professionals can round out their skill set in areas of deficiency, or new professionals can get a complete crash course in managing conferences and events. There's my elevator pitch for Chuck. I don't know if I'm going to get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That wasn't necessary. All right, I get a thumbs up. That's excellent. The idea here is, though, that I took an idea about doing more with our educational programming, and I boiled it down to a concept, the idea of a planned curriculum that people would do at their own pace. So it's the kind of thing people could log in and watch an hour, watch a couple hours, whatever, complete some exercises, whatever we thought was important for people to do, and ultimately then come out on the other side of that experience, either rounded out or having a kind of a full understanding. Let's say you're a new professional. I know we've seen some people that have just got hired right around the time that all this started. This would be a great way to get them up to speed on how to manage a conference and events operation. So that was my elevator pitch, just to give you an idea. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to take a pause here for 90 seconds. And those of you that have been floating around an idea, I want you don't have to write out a full 3 sentences, but if you'll just write down 2 or 3 bullets that reflect the concepts that you would want to develop into your pitch. I'm gonna say go here in just a second and give you 90 seconds, write down 2 or 3 or 4 bullets about how you would pitch your idea, the one you're thinking about right now, to your boss or a decision maker. And with that, I'm gonna say go and keep it quiet for 90 seconds. "30 seconds to go." Squeeze out those last couple ideas or bullet points. All right. Hopefully, most of you had an idea in mind, and hopefully most of you came up with 2 or 3 bullet points that you can use as we continue to go through this to make some more notes. And we'll do another short exercise a little bit later where you can spend another 90 seconds thinking about some things to add into this. Because what we ultimately would love is that if you would walk away today with a tangible idea and some concrete steps that get you started on making this happen for your organization or venue. And Chuck, I see that we have a question. Is it a good time to stop and answer that?
It's basically, it's a question and a comment. We're being asked the examples that people just wrote down. Is there any way that people might be sharing those? And the second part is a statement that basically you should mention the who, what, and why. And no, it is a question. Basically, should you mention the who, what, and why in the elevator pitch?
I think that's an excellent way to think about it, right? Who is this impact? And we're going to see some of these same questions throughout the slides that are coming. Who is going to be impacted, or who are we doing this for? What are we doing and why are we doing it? And again, I think that's very captured in the statement that I put together, and hopefully is some of the way that people are thinking about theirs. And if we have some brave souls out there that are willing to share, I would say go ahead and pop it in the chat box. Put your idea in bullet points, or put your, actually, if someone came up with their actual elevator pitch and is willing to share, pop it in that chat box and let other people benefit from the ideas that are going on. All right, let's go ahead and move along to the next slide here. Step 2 is to define your business model. So you've got an idea, you've got a pitch for it. Now you need to start thinking through more of the details. And step 2 is to figure out, what kind of idea do I have here? And I really believe that there are 3 business models that most ideas fall into. One is an idea that wraps around revenue generation. So this is an idea that's going to help us grow our revenue, or it's a new product that's going to allow us to sell more revenue, or it's an enhancement to our services that lets us charge more or upgrade people. And the idea, a lot of your planning will revolve around the strategies for getting the word out about the product and generating more revenue for your organization. The second one that a lot of ideas revolve around is cost efficiencies. So it may not be that we're adding something new or upgrading. It may be that we found a better way to do business, and we're going to save ourselves money for the long term, which is its own form of revenue generation, of course. It means now you have money you were spending here that you can now spend somewhere else on other things that are important to your organization. So cost efficiencies is the second model. The third one is increased service to customers. So your idea may not have a new revenue net gain. In fact, it might cost a little more, but what you're going to get out of that investment is increased quality or an increased level of service to customers, meaning that they are going to be more loyal to your brand or your facility or your organization. Or maybe, you know, you're an organization with a donor arm, and this is going to entice donors to open their pocketbooks and be more giving. You're looking at a way of getting a longer term, harder to measure return on investment by elevating the quality of the experience that they're getting. Now, some ideas obviously will have elements of all 3, and that, you know, an idea doesn't have to. Some great ones do. Some great ones fit cleanly into one of these 3 categories. But ultimately, you need to think about the idea that you have. Which business model does it primarily serve, and does it serve some of those other ones? Because the strategies that are going to come out in marketing and sales are going to tie back into what your business model looks like. All right. Now let's talk really quickly then about marketing and sales. So Chuck likes to say that the marketers build the tools that allow the salespeople to fight the fight, which is spot on. I have another quote that I also like to use, which is that selling is getting rid of something that you've got, whereas marketing is having something that you can get rid of. And so the idea is that the marketers kind of develop the plans and the strategies about whatever your product or your item is. And then the salespeople are the ones that figure out how to move that product, how to get it into the hands of the people who most need it out there. And the marketers are the ones that help identify who those people are. And so step 3 is where you start to identify your target markets. And so you've got a revenue model or you've got a business model. And so now you ask yourself, who benefits from this idea? And it could vary widely based on the audience out there. And so if your idea is really about cost efficiencies, you're probably not thinking about, you know, a big line of customers and the general public and things like that. Whereas if you're adding a new product or service, then you're probably going to be thinking about your customers and the general public out there. So you need to ask yourself, who is it that benefits from your idea? So with my elevator pitch, the Unique Venues University, clearly it would be the members within Unique Venues. And it could be that we say to ourselves, maybe we also let non-members in and go through Unique Venues University for a price. And so now my idea's got both a little bit of revenue generation to it, and it's got an increase or a quality of service to the existing members that we have. So you need to ask yourself who's going to benefit from your idea, because that's going to be important to figure out who to market and sell to. But another one that I always think is important is to ask yourself who might be threatened by your idea. So this is going to start to get you to think about maybe who your competition is or who your naysayers will be. If you're going to implement a cost efficiency strategy, and maybe that's, reducing some staff over time, not laying them off, but redesigning how you do things, or automating some things, who's going to be threatened by that idea? Because you have to market and sell to those people too. Otherwise, they're the ones that rise up and create the problems for you. And so again, with my idea, some people might think Unique Venues University is trying to become a certification program. And I would want to make it clear to partner organizations or other entities out there, we're not looking to create our own designation with this idea. We simply want to create a resource where people can get up to speed on various marketing and sales topics and fill out their skill sets in the areas where they might be lacking. So again, it's important to say who benefits, but also who is threatened. I saw we had another question in there, Chuck. Is it active, or can I keep moving on?
Keep moving on.
Okay. All right. Step 4 then is to start detailing your marketing plan. Now, again, you'll see there's lots of questions there. We will share the slides with this when it's done, so you'll have kind of the footprint for the steps and all of the different questions that you want to ask yourself. But now that you know who your markets are, you start asking yourself, who do you need to market to? What are the various subgroups of individuals out there that you need to develop some marketing materials and some outreach to? So again, taking my idea, Unique Venues University, we would certainly want to market this to our members out there. We'd want to make sure that they know about this new service and make sure that they understand how to access it. If we decided it was going to be a pay service, we would obviously want to do outreach to non-members out there and be able to let them know about this opportunity as well, and the cost that might be associated with participating in it. Additionally, as I mentioned with the threats, I would want to reach out to an organization like ASI and make sure they understood where we were coming from and what we were doing. Because again, the idea with this is to be additive to the resources for people across the industry, not necessarily to go into competition with people for the different kinds of things that are happening out there. And so again, wanting to be upfront and honest about, and then developing a plan to how I'm going to communicate with all of those people. Next question, what options do you have to reach the people out there? So, there's a wide variety of ways in which you market to people out there. You may decide, again, if this is a big new product or a upgrade or something like that, that you're going to do digital marketing, or you're going to buy banner ads, or you're going to do intro videos for Spotify or YouTube, or the places that your market is most visibly going to see the activities that you have. If this is very much an internal market, you just need to talk to staff and decision makers and maybe partners of your organization. If you're a campus and university, maybe it's food service or housing or other people that need to be involved. What are the options that you have to reach them? Do you schedule town hall meetings and sit downs? Do you do phone calls? Do you do face-to-face? There's a wide range of options that you have to reach out to people, and you need to ask yourself, what are my options? But then more importantly, which options will be most effective? If you're launching a new product, you're not going to make phone calls to every possible consumer out there and have a one-on-one conversation about how great your product is. It would be wonderful to live in a world where we could do that. And I think we used to do that 30 or 40 years ago. But in this day and age, you might say to yourself, nope, we're going Google Ads, and this is the way we're going to get in front of someone. Whereas with my idea, really, I would want to spend some time not only doing some research and talking to our members up front about what kind of a Unique Venues University will be most appealing to them, but then make sure that we're putting it in our newsletters and on our social media, and doing maybe an email blast when the time comes to make everyone aware that Unique Venues University is up and live. And so again, these are just ways for you to think about what's going on and outline start to outline the strategies that are going to be most effective for you. Now, just a quick reminder for people, my PowerPoint will advance here. There it goes. That marketing has the 4 Ps. And so as you're developing these strategies, again, think about the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, promotion, and placement. What are you selling? What are you going to charge for it if you are charging for it? And again, a cost efficiency business model might be something that still requires an investment, right? You might say, I'm buying new software so that I can make our workflow easier and free up staff time to do other things, but there's an investment up front for that software. Maybe you've got to spend $15,000, but you think you're going to gain $60,000 in productivity down the road. So price, what do you charge for it? Promotion, how do people know about it? And where do you go to sell it? And those tie back in with the strategies that you are thinking about implementing for marketing. All right, I'll do a quick stop there. Check in. Are there any open questions that need to be answered?
Nope.
Nope. All right, moving along. All right, step 5 will be to explain your sales model. So again, remember the difference is that marketing is developing some strategies, is coming up with the weapons, the tools that you need to push forward your idea, whereas sales will be the actual activities in getting people to invest or buy into your idea or product or service that you're launching. And so now you've got a different range of sales that you're, activities that you're going to work with, and questions that you have to ask yourself. So again, who are you selling to? And what are the sales strategies that you will use? And again, this is very different than just coming up with placement and promotion. This is thinking about, now that people engaged, how are you going to close on them? We obviously in Unique Venues spend a lot of time engaged in both marketing and sales activities on behalf of our members. And the sales strategies really relate to a wide variety of outreach mechanisms, emails, phone calls, one-on-one demos, and conversations, development and delivery of quotes, and ultimately, locking in and contracting and closing on a piece of business. And there's different strategies that get developed at every point of that process that we work with, that our entire team integrates, and that we refine and update on a regular basis. In your world, you've got to do the same thing. And in some, for many of you, I know that you're a single individual, maybe for your entire organization. You are the CEO, you're the marketer, you're the salesperson, you're the person that executes the business. And so sometimes it's hard to really think about these things in the different stages. But as a part of a business plan, you really want to take time and find the difference between developing the tools, the marketing things, and then figuring out, once you have those tools, what are you going to do with them, and how are you going to use them to sell people on your idea, your product, your service out there. And so again, I would challenge you to think through, are there different ways in which you will interact with the people around you to convince them that your idea is a good one? Are there different ways ultimately that you're going to convince staff to get on board with a particular initiative idea? Are there ways that you're going to convince the general public out there to give yourself a competitive edge in delivering a new product or a new service within the market? And ultimately, a question that's important not to forget is, who are your strategic partners out there? So sometimes you can't sell on your own. Sometimes you're going to need other people to be on board with you. Again, especially if this is a more internally focused idea, something that is based on, doing something internally your organization, a cost efficiency, a change in workflow, whatever it is, you may need to get other people on board. If we look at Unique Venues University, I've got some strategic partners in my organization that I have to get on board. Obviously, I have to convince the CEO that it's important, but then I'm going to need to get the marketing team on board. Again, I got thumbs up from Chuck. I love to see that. I'm going to get, did I get 2 thumbs? I can only see Chuck at the moment, so I'm not sure if I got thumbs up from Allie too, but I got to get Allie on board in the marketing area to help with the sales process. And then I've got to get the membership fulfillment team on board to make sure that they're talking with members about this opportunity and making sure that they are knowledgeable and ready to speak to them about it. And ultimately then, I've got to make sure that any of our partner organizations that find this as a value add out there are willing to help promote and share the information as well. So it's not just coming up necessarily with what I'm going to do, but it's also thinking about who are my partners within or external to my organization that are going to help me as well. Okay. Chuck, yes.
Oh, quick question, Joel. And we should, Allie and I should know this, but neither of us know this for sure. People are asking if we're going to get if the attendees will get the poll results. Do we put the poll result? Yeah, they're on the resources page, right?
No, I email the poll results and slides, if we have slides from a presentation, to everyone that attends the webinar. So, you know, we're trying not to get too much out there. If anyone ever wants anything from previous presentation, just let me know. Happy to send it to you. But yes, you'll get the poll results out there as well. All right. Just a reminder about how the sales process works. Again, there are some great webinars out there that we've done in recent weeks about the sales process, but it is a process. And so again, even as you're developing your sales strategies, think through the different steps of the sales process. Sales starts with an introduction. What is it that we're selling and why is it valuable to you? Then there's some discovery or some background where people can learn more about the product or service or idea and spend some time understanding or digging in a little bit deeper. There's usually a presentation that goes on. Again, we would call that a demo or a customized consultation in our world is the term that we like to use. But there's a presentation of the idea or the good or service out there. There's usually going to be follow-up that has to occur, and oftentimes we know that it takes 7 to 9 contacts and follow-ups with someone before they ultimately buy into and decide that they want to close on an idea. And then finally there's a closing process where you lock the person in, contract with them, and get them to make that purchase or get that idea off the ground and start your, you know, efficiency gaining or workflow change. And so as you're developing sales strategies, you want to be thinking through maybe each of these 5 phases, because your strategy might shift a little bit. And again, introduction phase, that's digital advertising, right? Get as much awareness about your product out there as you can. Discovery might be a landing page for your product or your service where people come in and know a little bit more about it. There might be a call to action, a request for information, or a click here for more info button on that website that leads to you following up and scheduling time for a presentation with that person. You then kind of circle back around with maybe some follow-up emails or phone calls to check in on how they're thinking or if they've had conversations with the rest of their organization. And ultimately, if you've been successful throughout, then you close them and you contract that piece of business. And again, I just used a product or service, but for those of you that are working in a large organization, isn't that exactly the same way that it works for trying to sell an idea internally, right? You've got to introduce the idea to your boss or other decision makers. You've got to get them some info so they understand it. Usually you get to stand up in front of the staff meeting or the leadership team meeting and do a presentation. You got to keep checking back in with that person to say, hey, did you guys ever think more about it? And ultimately, hopefully they say, yes, you've got approval, go ahead and keep going with this. And so again, that sales process, even though you don't think of it that way, in your everyday work, a lot of the times that you're pushing an idea forward, you need to follow the steps that are here. And being prepared, having a plan of attack, and knowing how you're going to communicate at each of these stages is critical to ensuring the best chance of success for your idea out there. All right, let me stop there. Any active questions at the moment? Nope. All right, we'll keep rolling along. And we're doing great on time. All right. Halfway through, step 6 is to identify opportunities for success. So you've come up with an idea, you've come up with a business model, you've thought through kind of the marketing and sales activities in the target markets. Now what you want to do is step back for a minute and start to really examine your idea and figure out, where do I really have opportunities to be successful, and where do I have some things that I need to overcome? And this is where you poke holes in your ideas a little bit, and maybe you don't do that alone. And so I always recommend that at this point in time, once you've spent some time thinking through all of the different strategies you want to employ, it's time to sit down and do a SWOT and to bring in a few key people that you trust, whether that's people in your organization, whether it's strategic partners that you have, or just people in your lives and worlds that you know and trust to be honest and straightforward with you, and do a basic SWOT exercise. And I know that everybody probably knows what SWOT stands for at this point, but I've got it outlined here again for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But wanted to remind people of what the difference is between strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats would be. So strengths and weaknesses relate to the physical part of your environment or the service-oriented part of your environment that you offer. These are tangible things that you typically have some measure of control over. So if you are a venue with a 5,000 seat auditorium, that's probably a strength because it means you can hold a piece of business that many other venues couldn't possibly hope to hold because you've got so many seats available in one venue out there. Or if you offer top of the line web registration services to your clients because you have a in-house system that was built and it functions great and it really adds value to a meeting planner's ability to schedule something, book a meeting at your facility, that's a service-oriented advantage that you may have over many other venues or organizations out there that don't have that to offer. And so strengths and weaknesses relate to things that you typically have some measure of control over in your world. And again, you want to ask yourself, so what are the things related to my idea that are physical or service-oriented advantages that I have versus what are the weaknesses that I have in those areas that may create a problem for me in pulling off the idea that I have. So again, maybe someone's idea was that they want to grow their business when we all get back to a world where we feel comfortable knowing we can do that by $200,000 or $300,000. But one of the weaknesses might be you're already maxed out on your overnight accommodation space. And solving that problem is going to be a challenge, and growing business then, therefore, it just means maybe you have to focus more on day business instead of overnight business. But then you'll go back and you'll adjust your marketing and sales plans to make sure you're not putting out a big call for overnight groups if you've identified that you're already maxed out in that area. And you need to focus more on messaging and themes and materials that draw in day business to your venue out there, because that's what your strength is right now, that you have the capacity to be able to do that. So those are strengths and weaknesses. Opportunities and threats are different. And again, it's totally okay when people are doing SWOTs. Like I used to lead SWOT exercises all the time when I was at the University of Arizona. And any idea that someone comes up at any point for any of these is important. But the idea behind opportunities and threats is that these are external things that usually are outside of your control that impact your ability to be successful. And so this could be, again, an opportunity might be a new CEO or president or board member that has an agenda or an idea about how things should work in your world that you can feed into and play off of in order to try to give your idea a chance to be more successful. Whereas a threat might be, again, an external force. We could say right now, COVID-19 is very much a threat to our industry. It's something that we have no control over right now that works against your immediate goals. Now, some people will take a threat like COVID-19 and start to look for the opportunities in it. So if I can't do everything that I normally do, what can I do? And then how do I build ideas and strategies around that? But it's important to look at what you have control over, strengths and weaknesses, and what you don't have control over, opportunities and threats, and take some time outlining what each of those things are. So again, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to stop for 90 seconds again. For those of you that had an idea and came up with a couple of bullet points for your elevator pitch, I want you to very quickly take 90 seconds and just try to really quickly write down one bullet for each of these, a strength of your idea, a weakness, an opportunity, and a threat. And we'll say go now, 90 seconds. And about 30 seconds left. See if you can't get one bullet for each. All right. Again, hopefully some people have some materials they'll be able to take away from this and work on later. Really quickly, I also encourage people to look at opportunities and be bold in doing so. I'll tell a quick story. When I was first the conference manager for the University of Arizona back in the mid to late 90s, we got a new president of the university, and one of the first things he did was put out a white paper with 10 elements that he would use for decision making. And we were struggling at the time to get our one-stop shop created and pull partners, campus partners together. And so I developed a presentation, right? I worked through the whole steps here. We got to the presentation phase for the president's cabinet. And I actually pulled 4 of his quotes from his white paper out and put them in my presentation and said, well, as the president said, you know, contributing to the economic health of Southern Arizona is critical to the success of the University of Arizona. And I said, this is how conference and events will do that, and went through some of the plans and ideas that we had. And I sprinkled 4 of these in there. And some people thought I was crazy. And I thought, well, what's the president really going to do? Is he going to argue with himself and say, no, 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 I didn't actually mean that out there? And so I really encourage you to look for those ways in which you can find allies, find people in your organization, in your community, in the world in which you exist, and, you know, either get them on board or borrow from, you know, things that they've talked about to make it easier for them to see where you're coming from and to slide into acceptance of the idea or the plan that you have. All right, let me check in. Any questions to answer? Nope. All right, we will keep on rolling. Step 7 then is to start to supply key assumptions. So now that you've poked some holes and again, maybe gone back and rethought some of your strategies out there for marketing and sales, or adjusted your idea and worked through the steps again. And remember, this is kind of an iterative process. You don't just go start to finish 1 to 10 and say, I'm done. Lots of times you might have to back up and do a couple steps again, or you come up with an adjustment to your idea and you go back and you rework these things. And then you keep making your way all the way through the plan so that you're refining your idea as you go. So here we want to start to supply some key assumptions. And this is where you ask yourself, all right, now that we've got this, what are the elements of the plan that can make or break the outcome? So with my idea with Unique Venues University, one of the most critical elements would be, right now, we're seeing 200 to 300 people on average show up for our educational webinars. Now, we know that part of that is because of COVID-19. People are working from home, they're not running meetings and events, they have more time on their hands, and so this is an activity they're choosing to take advantage of. Prior to COVID-19, we were averaging maybe 20 to 30 people on webinars like this. And so the question, the big element of this idea is, when we go back to COVID-19, I don't expect 200 to 300 people to show up, but will 70 or 80 show up for a webinar like this? Or will we go back to seeing lower enrollment? Because that might shed some light into, will people avail themselves of a Unique Venues University when they have the time? Or will we all go back to being so busy that we just don't build these kinds of professional development activities? So it's a risk, right? It's something that we have to consider in terms of putting a lot of time, energy, and effort and resources into something that we build out because we think it's going to be great, and then nobody uses it. And so you need to challenge yourself, what are the elements of my plan that could make or break the outcome out there? You know, if you're putting a new software system in place and your IT department is notorious for not really implementing software systems well, that's an element of the plan that could break the outcome there. The other way to ask yourself that question is, if someone brought the idea to you, let's say it was one of your staff members that brought this idea to you, because we're oftentimes, when we have an idea, we're really good at seeing only the good in it, but when someone else brings us an idea, we're really good at seeing all that's wrong with it. So challenge yourself to say, if one of your staff brought this to you, what would cause you to be skeptical about the idea? What are the things that you would say, well, we should probably think about these things a little bit, and develop the key assumptions in your plan. Because it's important to note right up front that any plan, any idea, you're making assumptions about how the world will work and what the outcomes will be. And so you want to go ahead and let people know what those key assumptions are. In the legal world, they would call that taking the sting out of the argument. If you're making an argument as a lawyer, and you know there's negative stuff that the other side is going to bring up, if you bring it up first and spin it and put it in your light, then when they bring it up, it doesn't seem so bad to the jury any longer because you've already explained it away before the other side had the chance. And so that's what key assumptions is all about, is making sure that you're thinking through who else might poke holes in your idea that didn't participate in your SWOT, and then how will you address those ideas? How are you going to reassure people, nope, I thought of this, and you're right, it is an issue, but here's some of the mitigation strategies, or here's the way we're going to watch and make a final decision determination before we move forward. All right. Step 8 is to conduct a cost-benefit analysis. So this is one of those scary worlds that a lot of people get to all the way through the first step 7s and have step 7s of the business plan, have no problems with. And then they get to step 8 and they start to panic just a little bit because a lot of people I know are not financial experts. I have a background in finance and administration, and so for me, this is very comfortable stuff. But for a lot of people, it's not. And so, but it's critically important that you be able to put some sort of estimate, some sort of accounting of new revenues, new expenses, or an increase in expenses, and a net position or a net decline. Again, remember, it might be we're increasing service, we're looking at long-term payoff in terms of higher enrollments, or more brand loyalty, or bigger donor gifts, or whatever it might be. But you need to be able to tell a decision maker, this is where we're going. Nothing is worse. And I used to, as an administrator, I'd get people come to me all the time with an idea, and I'd say, okay, but what is this going to cost us? And they just wouldn't have any idea. They'd say, it's such a great idea, let's do it. And I'd be like, I need to see what the cost benefit is going to look like on this. And so basically you do that by developing a pro forma statement. Now, I will acknowledge right up front, if this is not your forte, find someone to do this with you and for you. You have people in your world that can help you. No idea comes to manifestation all on its own. Again, think back to the 3 quotes that we talked about before. Everybody recognizes that you need help to pull these things off. So find someone in your organization, or again, in your world, that does understand numbers, that can help ask the right questions to figure these things out, and put together a statement that shows your sources, your revenues, your fees, your gifts, whatever it is that your idea is generating, your uses, the direct and indirect expenses. So anything that might be new, or, if you, like, a lot of times people will forget, hey, if I bring in $200,000 worth of new business, it typically costs me 50% of that in labor and operating expenses. So the real net on that is only 100,000. A lot of people like to just say, hey, I brought in 200,000, but the net on that is only 100,000. So again, an accounting of direct and indirect expenses that apply, and then ultimately a bottom line, so that people can see what this idea is going to generate or what it's going to do for the organization. And as a part of that, then don't just throw numbers at them, because again, that's why a lot of times the numbers are not effective. The numbers are just part of the story. You need to then use those numbers to say, what are the benefits that we're going to gain in all of this? And the numbers only back up that story and help to show, hey, look, we're going to engage more customers, or we're going to increase and add a new product line, or we're going to save a bunch of money by going through this exercise. The numbers show it, but here's what we walk away with. And we're going to be a more efficient, effective organization, wider base, whatever it might be out there. And so here's an example of what a sample pro forma might look like. I apologize if it's a little bit hard to read, but I just wanted to give you a sense. This is one way of thinking about kind of maybe a venues business, where you've got revenues that are coming in and expenses that are going out and a net position. And again, this is, the idea is that you start with a baseline. So where are we now, or where do we think we're going to be now? So maybe this is a venue that when they sit down and do a full accounting of what it is that they're doing, they're not actually making a whole lot of money. And you'd say to yourself, well, why would anyone do this? Well, a lot of our venues we know are parts of much larger organizations. So, maybe you're a museum and your events activities are important for outreach and relationship building and education and things like that, but your primary focus is obviously the exhibits and the clients that come through and all of the different arms of what you do as a venue. Or you could be a college and university where this is a small part of it, but it's a critical part because it helps with bringing in youth so that might enroll at your institution later, or building strong research or academic connections or whatever it might be. But let's say you wanted to add some staff and then add some marketing activities and grow your business. And so this pro forma demonstrates how that might happen. So again, if you look at the expenses first, the salaries and wages increase from the baseline year out of the gate. Maybe you're hiring someone now fully dedicated to sales and marketing instead of it just being you're the one person that does everything. You bring someone on to focus on sales and marketing, or they focus on operations and you do the sales. And that's going to start to drive up your revenues because you have more dedicated activities out there. And then maybe over time, as you get to year 3, you're adding another event coordinator to keep up with all this new business. And on the pass-through expenses line, you'll see that as we grow business, a lot of the money that we collect, maybe it's going to other places because it's paying for catering, or it's paying for AV, or it's paying for, facilities contractors, or whatever it is that we have to do. So we're accounting for all the real costs of our idea. But look what's happening to the bottom line. Then as we're increasing business, as our revenue is growing, we go from not making money to making money 3 years down the road. Now, again, this is just one slice of the way that you might think about it. Your idea, your numbers would look very different, but this is the important part of it. And then we would talk through what are the benefits. Again, we're bringing in more people, we're engaging more customers. They have a sense to see all of our services that we offer. Donors might be attracted to what we're doing here. You can outline all of the different pieces that are part of this. I see a question came in. Chuck? Nope, you're on mute.
Can we have the recording of today's webinar? That's why I didn't.
Oh, perfect. Just checking in, making sure.
I might as well say it now. This whole thing is being recorded, and it will be on uniquevenues.com/resources.
Perfect. All right. A few more slides here to go. Step 9 then is to detail the return on investment. And so the pro forma talks about kind of the bottom line. Return on investment talks about how long does it take for us to get back what it is we're putting into this idea in the first place. And so again, it's a slightly different way of telling the story around the financial impact or the soft ROI, the engagement impact of the idea, the product, the service that you're working with. And so you want to ask yourself, how long is it going to take to see a return on the investment that we made? Well, again, in this model, you'll see we actually go backwards the first year, right? Because we're hiring a new staff member. We are, increasing our marketing budget there. We're doubling it out of the gate in year 1. We're going to obviously pay more and pass through things like, so in year 1, we're putting money into this, another $64,000 than we originally were. But in year 2 and 3, we start to make that back. And so our payback period on this is 2 years. Because if we increase up to 141 positive, then that year 2 is where we break even. You might not break even till year 3, you might break even in year 1, but it's important to talk about how long, so someone knows that they've got a period of time that they've got a kind of flow to cash flow problem to get to where we're going to see the payoff for this. Knowing all your assumptions, knowing all your strategies, all that stuff, this is what we're going to do. It's always helpful to try to talk about minimum and maximum returns. So I could take this pro forma and I could do a worst case, best case, and I could do a middle line that says, but here's what I think is probably going to happen. And some decision makers like the idea of saying, well, worst case, it takes 3 years to get there, and we only have 100,000 that we're making in year 3. And in the best case, we're even in year 1 on it, we're making $1 million in year 3. Whatever the numbers are for your world, you can do that. And then what factors could increase or diminish the ROI? So again, coming back to your SWOT assessment and your key assumptions, what are the things out there that would push you either more towards the minimum or more towards the maximums that are in play out there? And again, I've seen a couple questions come in, so I just want to stop and nope, shaking the head, keeping going. All right. A lot of times people are uncertain how to calculate ROI, so I thought I'd give you the quick formula. This is the formula. This is how you calculate return on investment. It's a very simple formula. It's the gain of the investment minus the cost of the investment divided by the cost of the investment times 100%. Now again, coming up with the actual value of the gain from the investment might be a little bit tricky, depending on what your idea is and how you're bringing revenue into your system. Or again, if it's a cost efficiency, the gain from your investment is going to be the money you save down the road, and it might be hard to do that, to figure out exactly what it looks like. So I'm not saying this is an easy number always to calculate, but the formula is straightforward and simple. The cost of your investment, that's what goes into it. So like we talked about, it's not just, hey, I spent $20,000 on marketing, I spent $50,000 also to service that new business when it came in the door. So the total cost of my investment was $70,000 in that case. So again, here's an example of ROI. If we were to invest $75,000 into an idea, I know that sounds like a lot of money. For a lot of venues out there, that might be your whole budget for the year. I get that. But I'm using it for illustrative purposes here. If we invest $75,000 into it, but we gain $100,000 from that activity, and we do the math on our ROI, that is a 33% gain, a return on our investment, which is extraordinary, right? Any idea that would say we are going to get 33% on it, you should be doing it right now. In typical food service environments, it's 10% is a great target. If you're eking out 10%, you're doing really well. Most would be in the 5 to 7% range. You know, various venues, again, depending on your business model, things like that, might be happy in the 12 to 15% range. So I use it illustratively to talk about, don't shy away from ideas because they have big numbers. If you can get equal or more gains associated with them, you can encourage someone to make the investment in the idea. I remember the very first thing, big thing I wanted to do back when I was the conference manager, I wanted to buy an ad in Successful Meetings magazine when they did a campus and university supplement. And it was gonna cost something like, I think it was $3,000, and my boss freaked out. And I said, trust me, this is gonna work. And we spent $3,000 and we made we booked $200,000 worth of business. The ROI on that is, you know, thousands of percentage of stuff. So don't shy away from big numbers. Build the argument, build the case, go through all these steps to help someone understand why that investment is worth it and what the potential ROI looks like with that activity. All right, finally here, we're gonna get to step 10, which is to develop a plan for assessment. Because a lot of times we'll get all the way through an idea, we'll even start implementing it, and then we stop there and we don't come back around, circle around and say to ourselves, is this working? Are we on track with the plans that we were doing? And do we need to make adjustments for the next cycle or the next iteration so that we can do better than we're doing right now? And so you need to say to yourself, how are we defining success with this idea? What are the metrics that we're going to measure? What are the ways in which we're going to do that? How often are we going to measure it? And what are some of the critical milestones that we need to achieve in order to say that this idea worked, this was something that was valuable, that generated the return that we were looking for? And ultimately, it's a tough one to ask, but it's important. How long are you going to give this idea to be successful before you make big changes or you just pull the plug altogether? Because again, a lot of people will go into it and be like, it's going to work, it's going to work. I'm not, you know, it's fine. But you need to just say up front, you know what, we're going to give this 12 months or 18 months or 3 fiscal years or whatever it is to determine, is the investment that you're making paying off the way that it's going to be. Finally, out there, then what you want to do when you're all done working through the steps, iteratively, multiple times, refining, is you want to dial this report down to no more than 2 to 3 pages or 10 PowerPoint slides. Again, for the decision makers in your life, they're getting lots of people coming to them with ideas, especially right now. I'm sure there's lots of things going on. They're not going to read a 30-page paper, at least not to start with. They may later say, go back and flesh this out into something bigger. But you want to detail each of the steps that's important. Maybe not all of them fit in with your idea, but you want to detail bullets, again, or a short paragraph about the steps. You can do it in step order, or you can just craft it into a narrative that flows kind of from start to finish of here's the idea, here's the strategies, here's the numbers, and here's the outcomes, in a way that you can give it to someone to read or use it in PowerPoint to do a quick presentation with an audience out there. You may have to tailor it from time to time to a specific audience. So you might tweak this report or the presentation for decision makers versus what you're going to talk to your staff about, or a campus partner, or somebody else that you might be working with out there. And again, you want to make sure this is a professional document, that it's formatted well, it's proof that charts and tables all add up and are aligned correctly, and that you're using good design elements in it. And so again, have someone else look at it. Don't just think you have to do this all yourself. Use the people around you to make it. Put it together, and then you're ready, based on that pitch that you built, to hand it off to someone to use. So in summary, again, wanted to be able to give you some steps, a lot of questions to think about. I know you'd love to say, hey, give me the template for a business plan. You can do a Google search for business plans out there, and you will find 1,000 or more different templates out there that you can use, but no one template really fits all. It's about thinking through the steps. It's about giving you the questions to think about and ask yourself, or to ask your group or your team that's working on the idea, and then develop the strategies, the materials, the financials, and the outcomes that are important to your idea, and sharing them in a professional, documented way with the people out there that can be your ally, that can support your initiative, your idea, and can help you get it off the ground. So there's the 10 steps to a business plan. Certainly want to say thank you to everyone for being here today, but let me check in with Chuck and see if there are any outstanding questions out there that we have. I think.
Nope, Joel, I actually did a call out for questions. Told him it was last chance, and I do not have any yet. And
right.
So I think that's, from a question standpoint, that's a wrap.
All right, perfect. Then I'm going to do one last thing here, is just remind everybody that we have some upcoming webinars yet in the unique next level series. The marketing strategy one, where we'll be talking about building a brand guide, will be on May 14th. And on May 20th, we'll be talking about digital advertising. We also have a unique series launching this Thursday. We'll be talking about universal design for meetings and events on April 30th. Generation Z, how to market to and hire Gen Z individuals on May 5th. And a leadership, and we're thinking maybe some people might start migrating back to their workplaces, or starting to think about a plan for doing so. So we've got Dr. Michael Brown talking about how to work with your team and continue to inspire them as we go through more adaptations during this time. And then, as always, we've got member group therapies out there coming up. And we're planning to do a special member group therapy on May 19th just for our Canadian venues, as well as a, oh, it says my, oh no, okay. Is my screen showing?
It has your.
Okay, sorry about that.
And it has your other presentation, Joel.
Oh, it does? Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. This is what I get for running 2 PowerPoints today. And then ultimately a US member group therapy on May 21st. You can find all of these on our resources page. So with that, I again want to thank everybody for being here today. We appreciate your time and your attention. We will get the materials out to everyone, and we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Thanks, and have a good rest of your afternoon.
Hi, everyone.
Bye-bye.